Longwillow, if I pronounced that correctly, Senior Solution Architect for the public sector at Cradlepoint. We've got Nancy Spittle, the Northeast Public Sector Partner Manager. We've got Reed Perryman beside me here, our Director of Public Sector Sales here at RCN. And then myself, I'm Mark Indelicato, your host for today, as well as the Content Marketing Specialist here at RCN. Guys, I'm really excited to have all of you on the show. How's everybody doing?
Doing great, Mark.
Awesome.
Good to be here.
Doing great, and I appreciate you extending the invite to Tom. Tom is my my engineering colleague in crime, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. Doing great.
Yeah, the more the merrier for sure. Cool. So let's move on to the agenda. So got a couple of things we're talking about today. We'll be looking at revolutionizing disaster recovery, improving last mile connectivity, and the options available when it comes to deployment. We're going to wrap up by answering your questions. And as a side note, be sure to post any questions that you guys have into the Q&A section on the side of your window at any point during the presentation, and we'll get to them during that section. I also want to point out we'll be offering a free one-on-one consultation at the end of this presentation, so be sure to stick around for that. And I just realized I had presentation like 4 times in my notes there. You don't realize till you say it out loud. So first question I'm going to ask, and the way this will work, I'll just pitch these questions to everyone, but Reed, I'll let you go first. What role does connectivity play in disaster recovery?
So yeah, that's a really great question, Mark. It's a really broad question as well. And so I'll take the initial swing here, and then I'll pitch it over to our friends from Cradlepoint, both Nancy and Tom. But really, when I think about a disaster, right, I think about you could have a natural disaster. So you could have a fire, you could have a tornado, you could have a hurricane or an earthquake, or you can actually have what I call a human element, that type of disaster. So an active shooter scenario or a bombing or something of that nature, right? Whatever your disaster might be, the people on the front line that are responding to citizens either in the line of fire or who are having to be pulled out of rubble after an earthquake are your first responders. So what I like to call guns and hoses here at RCN, but really your law enforcement agencies, your EMS agencies, your search and rescue agencies, every county EMA or state EMA agency, sometimes even the military truck rolls in to assist with those efforts, right? Let alone the fire department, which I don't think I mentioned, but every single one of these agencies relies on technology from a day-to-day basis, whether that's through their computer and softwares they have on their computers, whether that is drones that might have some sophisticated thermal imaging capabilities to try to locate survivors in certain disaster-related scenarios, whether that's getting additional video feeds deployed out there, right? There's so many different applications, technology speaking, that are so reliant on connectivity. And the bottom line is that these technologies are designed to increase efficiency and safety in these mission-critical rescue operations or mitigation operations. And if they don't have those extensions of their capabilities or those efficiencies, then that seriously impairs their ability to protect the public they're sworn to protect. So I think that, information is power, information is efficiency. And as we are in the information age, you've got to be connected to the network to be able to get that information and do their jobs to the best of their ability. So really, technology is a non-factor if connectivity is not in play, especially in a modern day disaster recovery.
Yeah, I would say even going forward too, even more so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Nancy or Tom, I'm not sure which one you want to tackle that next, but what are your thoughts on the role of connectivity in disaster recovery?
So if sorry, it's Tom, I'll go ahead and take a swing at that immediately. For me, I've seen it deployed in a variety of ways throughout, I'm going to say within a single organization's network, but then also when you look at a community, especially within public sector, that's what we are talking about, right? Is that there are a variety of organizations within each of our communities that help us respond in any sort of a disaster scenario and whatnot. So very often you can look at your network having I'm going to say, an active passive, right? So cellular can always be a part of your network, but it might be in a passive failover mode, right? Rather than maybe in an active, right? With a, with your hard line. But we see it specifically in an active role all the time in public safety vehicles, whether that's going to be your, your regular, on the beat vehicles, or it's going to be a command center, right? That's actually coming out, setting up shop, right? And then making sure that it can actually can control our response, as new information, as Reed was saying, as new data comes in. And then, of course, you can also see very often where we're going to have people that are able to roll out and set up right within a pop-up network kit itself. So very often, I like the question that you had asked is your network serving you? I think is how you put it, right? Are you getting what you need out of your network? And very, very often it's going to be, well, one, what is some of it's going to be your age, right? Like what kind of networks have you used? And so what do you expect that a network can do for you versus, right, what is actually, and that's where public safety is really showing the power of a cellular network, because more often than not, their first time that they're dipping their toe, I call it, into the cellular network, pool, it's very often with vehicles. So they're already used to having a very secure network in motion and going where it needs to go, right? And how far the edge of that networks makes sense, because a great example is even this. So right now I'm at the police security expo up here in Atlantic City. And so while DC and Southern Jersey got the edge of Henry, right, it really impacted that area. You immediately see, right, your towers, regardless, right, your hard lines are going down and your cell towers may be going down, but immediately you have your cellular carriers are just sending out these massive trucks and they're popping up their towers, right, in no time. And so that's the flexibility that you have with cellular, is how quickly you can get a secure enterprise grade network up and running to serve any type of response, right? As Reed, listed off quite a variety.
Yeah, I love that example too, because kind of like you said, cellular towers are one of the last things that are going to go down, compared to ISP, and they're certainly a lot quicker, at least feels like, getting back up than traditional ISP is. Tom, what are your thoughts on this?
Right. Well, like you said, the cell towers are generally the last to come down, and the first to come up with it. I believe the term is COW, cellular on wheels. I've also heard that as computer on wheels, right, in the medical industry, but cellular on wheels, and they come out with those big booms and they raise the towers, and it's the first thing to come up in a disaster like that. And I like the way Reed put it. Sometimes these disasters are human, and sometimes they're non-human, weather, earthquakes, fires, and we also refer to that as controllable and uncontrollable. Some things you have control over, some things you don't. But some of those controllable, it could be something as simple as a carrier mistake. I knew of a person, a technician in ISP a number of years ago. It's probably 20 years ago. Internet back when the gateway router and just made a mistake on a command line, right, and kind of black holed some traffic for no IP BGP, and all of a sudden they're out. And so it really could be anything that causes it. And with regards to disaster recovery, that could be, Nancy talked about active passive, active active, and that could be a dual carrier, dual cellular carrier, active active for disaster recovery. So yeah, really it's about the connectivity and maintaining that connectivity, because really all our applications, all of our data, all our storage is either at a HQ data center or in the cloud somewhere. So you need access to that.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. We'll go ahead and jump onto our second question here. Let me go ahead and share my screen again so everyone watching can see it real quick. But what are some examples of a disaster scenario where 5G is the preferred option? And this might not be worded the best way, obviously, since not everyone has 5G just yet. But what are some maybe either use cases or potential deployments that 5G could have an advantage over LTE from a disaster scenario perspective?
Yeah, I'll take a swing at this first, and I'm very interested to hear what Nancy and Tom have to say on this. But when we talk about 5G, Mark, we have to talk about the currencies, plural, rather, that 5G has to offer not only the consumer, but public safety agencies such as law enforcement or fire. For a hypothetical here, we'll focus on fire, okay, right? But if we list through some of those currencies with with 5G, we're going to talk about increased bandwidth or speeds. We're going to talk about increased capacity, or the ability to fit more clients on one cellular element, so a microcell or a big cellular tower. And then third, we're going to talk about reduced latency. So there's another one called multi-access edge compute, but we'll stay away from that one for now and get real technical on that one. But if we talk about those three, right, the increased speeds, the increased capacity, the decreased latency, and then let's put this into a urban fire type scenario where you have a whole block of buildings that are on fire, and firefighters are actively going in and out of these buildings for rescue type purposes, right? We're going to talk about an urban environment because we've got a good chance of a lot of good viable mid-band, high-band 5G potentially being there.
Right.
But let's imagine that they have a video camera integrated into their helmet, right? And that video camera software is also integrated with thermal imaging.
Yep.
So they're not only able to heat map the fire right there in real time, almost an augmented reality type situation that might be displaying on the clear visor of that helmet, but also that live video stream is being able to be viewed in real time by their command staff. They might also have a biometric sensor on that firefighter. There might be a carbon monoxide sensor somewhere there, or a carbon monoxide detection system somewhere integrated into that platform. Right. Really, the point I'm trying to make is that 5G is offering so much more than traditional cellular technologies have. 4G to the origin of cellular, that really I think we haven't even tapped into the total market potential or solution potential of what 5G is going to bring. And so if we talk about, you're right, this is a tricky question because 5G is kind of all over the place right now. But I think that in the next 2 to 5 years, the currencies of 5G, specifically those three, integrated into any kind of public safety scenario is going to be fantastic. And because I'm thinking about it, let's take hurricanes, right? Cellular, basically a traditional issue with hurricanes is that you might have 2 out of 3 cellular towers go down, and now everybody's trying to use one cellular tower on their mobile client. First responders are also trying to use that with their mobile clients or their mobile routers that are powering their NDTs that let them do their job efficiently. But if we have an increased capacity that 5G is going to offer, then you can fit more clients. So that's kind of a smaller way that it can help with capacity issues and keeping everyone connected after a disaster with reduced cellular elements. But I think it's really some of those higher level technologies around augmented reality and detection systems through very high resolution video are going to be a lot of the main things you start seeing come to the field of play.
Awesome. Yeah. I really liked that fire example that you said. I actually wrote a blog, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 months back, that featured a product like that, and they used LiDAR, and so it would map out the area that one particular firefighter was in, and then it would share that map with everyone else. So it's like, okay, this room's already been mapped out, so it's been checked, it's clear, so no one's like walking over anyone else's shoes, or and it shares it with HQ as well at the same time, just to allow for better planning. But I just thought it was interesting that I'd mentioned. Nancy, what do you think about this?
So I have a couple of thoughts that I think, because it's a really interesting time that we're living in, right? Because we can already see what these sort of applications will look like, right? And that they are already in development. What I also then take it back to is sometimes, right, with our customers, we be like, well, that's great, but that's future Nancy, but today Nancy needs this, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I think about that sort of that today Nancy is trying to think about how am I going to put in place my network now that allows for that growth and that increased capacity, right? So something that might be either field upgradable. What are the solutions that are happening now? So we already know, right, with a lot of those first responders, we already have radio systems built into the infrastructure of buildings, right? So they do have that constant connectivity, and that's what's in that growth. What it comes down to as well is, like we talked about earlier, with failover, or just that disaster recovery, and making sure that we are already, prepared for it, but we're in that knowledge. I'm going to go to right, RCN, right, with their partnership with Cradlepoint, offers to all of their customers, professional level training around cellular networking, right? Because that's going to be the issue now. Is maybe 5G isn't in your place, but by your place, I mean your area, right? Your community, whatever you're tasked to guard or protect, right? As a public safety agency. With that, though, is you do want to make sure that you and your team are already going to be very well aware of how cellular can help you now, but also to have enough training to make sure that you see where it can grow and that you're already putting in that framework to handle that. So one way I had described it is like, yeah, earlier it's like, where public safety, dips their toe into the cellular, the pool of solutions, they do want to make sure right now that they are having some of that training that's done. So they're able to, like 5G people described it as a wave and that it is coming. You want to make sure you and your team are able to surf that wave of cellular solutions and that you're not going to get flooded, right, by a hurricane of 5G that you weren't prepared or understood what it might be able to have happen. So then your team gets caught behind, right? Because if you're already preparing now, not only with knowledge, right? We said knowledge is, information is key, but you're also starting to budget appropriately as you're watching the development, and working with your carrier partners of what's going to be available for you to offer your community for safety solutions as 5G does build out fully into your market.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was a great response.
I'm a dream big, but what do you have to do now to realize that dream and have the budget and the talent pool to handle it?
Yeah, absolutely. Tom, what are your thoughts on this? I'm curious from a hardware perspective.
I don't know how I follow Reed and Nancy. I mean, they really nailed it. Yeah, I mean, with regards to 5G and what it brings, I mean, the three legs of the stool that Reed hit on, the massive machine type communication, which is the ability of the 5G standalone new radio networks to put even more radios per tower, more density. To be able to absorb all those whether they be sensors or endpoints or handhelds or MDTs, computers, the enhanced mobile broadband that they call that, just the speed, the throughput capabilities of a 5G standalone network, and again the ultra reliable low latency. I mean, those are the three legs of the stool, and Reed hit on them all. And then Nancy built on that with regards to just getting ahead of the game, endpoints that are backward compatible with the latest 4G LTE technology, but in place for when that 5G becomes available in that area, and those applications become available. And my favorite example of that is Uber didn't exist before LTE, right? LTE came first, and then Uber layered on. And we all know, everybody uses that, a lot of people, right? So it's being set up to take advantage of these technologies as they come out. And I love the way Nancy put it, and we wrote it down. What is it? Avoid the flood, ride the wave.
And one thing I want to actually add on there and get a little bit more into the actual Cradlepoint endpoints that can serve up some of these 5G currencies today, or actually prepare an agency for 5G. Let's just pick a scenario out of the hat, right? So let's pick something on the lighter side that people might not think is a disaster for, let's say, the community, but maybe for a school district, right? So imagine one of my biggest school district customers right now is actually looking to deploy 2 5G wideband adapters from Cradlepoint called the W4005. I mean, this is a 5G modem and router all packed into one. And it's really great because Cradlepoint has thoughtfully combined the antenna element of a deployment with the actual router modem part of that deployment. You actually deploy this out on the roof of your building or on the exterior of your building and have that pointed directly at your strongest 5G access closest in proximity. And so we've got a couple in our building here at RCN, and we're pulling speed tests of 300 megs plus in little Knoxville, Tennessee, here in the Southeast. We're not even a major metro. We're not an NFL city, but that's really impressive, though. You can run a whole school's network off that. So what I'm ultimately getting at is it's test day, right? State tests. And the school's network goes down, right? What happens if their primary fiber at their data centers crash? They get cut, there's construction that day, and then you're going to lose this whole day of mission critical testing there for the school district.
Yeah.
It's kind of disaster for them. If I'm in that IT department, I'm stressed, but more than normally so. But let's say if they deploy that W4005 adapter and they're able to supply 300 plus meg pipes down to their data centers and then cascade that out, or even if they were to segment it off further than that and have a wideband adapter at each individual node of their branch. In this case, this customer has 160 different locations, not 160 schools, but locations. But out of their 100 or so schools, they've got a pipe of at least 250 to 300 megs, along with some of the features like application aware QoS, traffic steering, where they are prioritizing this testing domain. This gets all of our effort right here. Flip the scenario or the narrative and say that there's an active shooter scenario and they've cut the ISP. I don't want that to happen. My wife's a kindergarten teacher. I'm terrified of that happening, but it makes me feel better, especially if they're on a voice over IP system, or if they have some kind of panic button solution that's backhauled by their ISP system. If they have a viable backup in place to counteract that human element in that scenario, to counteract their ISP going out, again, a human element if it got cut from construction in a testing scenario. But it's just something where, customers today, right, can plan ahead. What do they say? It's like old Boy Scouts motto. It's like, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Yeah. And so if our school districts and law enforcement customers and public safety customers are proactively, trying to ride that 5G wave, as Nancy's saying, deploy failover ahead of those disaster scenarios that might knock out traditional ISPs, they can keep their mission critical comms online and immediately go out there and start serving the community with that information delivered right to their tablets, their MDTs, whatever that is, to make them more operationally efficient. So I think, I wanted to get a little bit more down there, but yeah, those wideband adapters are available today. And what's great is that the 4005 actually covers not only the low and mid bands of 5G that are somewhat pervasively available today, but also the millimeter wave stuff, the true fiber replacement stuff that some of our attendees today might see advertised on Hulu commercials. Right. That's truly an ISP replacement. So it definitely wanted to make sure we dove into the failover pre-prep side of things before we got away from this question.
Yeah, absolutely. And last thing I kind of want to touch on here, Tom, if I can ask you this. So say 5G is not available in my area just yet, right? How many different options are there for, purchasing something that could either become 5G or needs an adapter? It's just depending on, obviously there's so many different ways you could go about getting this, but how easy is it to get something that can, be upgraded later on?
Right. So, I mean, from a Cradlepoint specific standpoint, there's we have enterprise branch, routers and models are E300, E3000, and they're 5G optimized and 5G ready. Our highest end, the E3000, branch router just was released with the 5G modem integrated with it, and you can, and in the future, add another 5G modem to it. As far as the adapters go, right, from the low to the mid to the high band, we have adapters that kind of cover the whole spectrum, and as well as the mobile R1900, right? And all these 5G adapters, what's very important is that they come with the latest 4G LTE, category 20 chipsets, right? So 5G doesn't have to be available to take advantage of the higher speeds of, gigabit LTE and LTE advanced technologies, and still be ready or be upgradable in the future for when the time comes.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that. It was a bit of a leaded question, but we got there. Cool. So with that, I think it's time we'll start talking last mile connectivity. Let me pop this up on the screen here. Let's see. Okay, cool.
I'm interested on your take on it because Tom and I had different takes on it.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear what Reed and all of you guys have to say. So really, what is last mile connectivity, Reed?
Yeah, so last mile connectivity in my mind is really anywhere that a traditional wireline is not going to reach. I think a lot of people automatically assume off the grid, right? Somewhere off the beaten path. Let's take a search and rescue agency that's going well off the road grid, and they're going into fields, they're going into forests, they're going into mountainous terrain or desert terrain, really places where there's no need for a traditional wireline, but where cellular frequencies might propagate out to. So, but I think we traditionally start there, and we fail to mention that for a lot of schools, for a lot of organizations that are planning new construction, say a school district grows and they have to spin open a new school. Let's say that a police agency, a town is experiencing significant growth, and the PD has to go out and break new ground in a larger PD and city jail and so on with the county, right? My home county just had a new county jail really out in the middle of the field, where I guarantee you there was no wire line running that last mile to that new building. And so across all these scenarios, right, one, at the new construction, cellular can be a viable method, especially within the confines of a city limits area where there's readily available LTE. Or even close outside the city limits, or even certain parts of the county near cellular towers, where you choosing to deploy a cellular solution like a Cradlepoint E3000 with 5G that also runs the latest and greatest 4G LTE technologies, or for those search and rescue parties, or those sheriff's departments, or those agencies that are going off the beaten path, where there's still cellular currencies out there, choosing to get something that can even, go beyond where a car or a command vehicle can travel out into that field, truly the last mile after the last mile, right? So something that's hooked up to a constant power source and portable, like RCN's PopUp Network Kit, which integrates Cradlepoint's IBR mobile series routers, the 1700, the IBR 900, the R1900 for a 5G endpoint, into a ruggedized carrying case with a battery that can operate for up to 16 hours to spin up that rapid network, Wi-Fi network via cellular, and still get them that mission critical forensics capabilities, that mission critical reporting capabilities, that mission critical video capability. Right. Both scenarios I've talked about here, that's what last mile connectivity means to me. It's just anywhere you can't get that wire line, whether traditional or non-traditional, what you think of, that cellular can come in and save the day, either as a stopgap solution or a primary solution or a per need solution that's going to result in some mission critical efficiency for those organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nancy, what do you have to add to that?
Well, I think so. I think Reed and I have a similar approach, because that last mile is really going to depend on who we're talking to. What is their last mile? So came up earlier really about schools, and are they set up with what their disaster might be, right? It's that loss of internet connectivity, and then it might be a testing day and whatnot. But we also saw in that pandemic, right, where kids were having to go home, and then we were finding out that we really didn't have an internet coverage of all of our country, right? So now, right, we have that last mile connectivity for schools comes up in two ways, right? Whether you're doing an emergency connectivity fund for school buses, so then your kids, right, are actually able to use the time while they're in that school bus, as well as very often kids have had to work from home. And now I don't care where you're from, like, Reed said, hey, we're getting this amazing stuff coming out of Knoxville, and we're not that large of a city. Once you get out of, right, certain size city, Knoxville, Boise, Idaho, maybe about the same, most states are rural. And now, right, we're finding out that there is a huge swath of our country doesn't have that connectivity. And so, right, there are funds out now for rural broadband, and that allows also for fixed wireless. So you talk about there's a new last mile, and that is the middle of nowhere. And once that's sort of covered, that then changes too. If we're talking about putting in, whether it's a new school or how far out, right, our police vehicles go, but then especially in disasters, depending on your area of the country, right? Whether that's flooding, it's fire season, it's tornado season, how far out our recovery, public safety officers are able to keep connectivity and whatnot. So that for me, depending on your customer or the agency you're talking to, or the the citizen you're talking to, their last mile is gonna be a little bit different.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
that's been my view, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It reminded me of a stat that I had seen. It's been a couple months, I think, since I've seen this, but it was something like 6 or 7% of all school-age children do not have access to high-speed internet, which is only measured, I think, 20 megs download, I think, is how the
Right.
government clarifies it.
It's a low bar.
Yeah, it's very low. But yeah, that's really fascinating.
You
Tom,
have that, right? I mean, RCN's done a lot with that, with whether it's the PopUp Network or even just working with kids, making sure that they have that connectivity at home as well for school. So sorry to step on Tom's toe.
No, that's Nancy, we didn't disagree on what the last mile was. We were just talking, to your point. It talks about, who are you talking to? Are you talking, is it urban, suburban, or rural area? Is it brick and mortar, or is it in vehicle? And I mean, you go back 10 years, and traditionally the last mile was that distance between the carrier central office and your brick and mortar location. And I mean, it could even just be from the street outside and the parking lot to your building, because there's usually only one conduit going in, and that backhoe or whatever, the landscaper can take that out. But as we move out from there and into the vehicle, and I like the way Reed said it, it's the last mile past the last mile, and I really like that. It's let's talk about power, right? I love the idea of the battery. I mean, a disaster could be the power grid. Luckily most cell towers have diesel backup or some sort of battery backup, so that those networks will be up. And now you're either in a kit with a battery that can run for 16 hours, or you're in vehicle running off the car battery, right? So there are several ways you can protect yourself against a disaster or an outage on that last mile, past the last mile. So yeah, I mean, again, traditionally it was from the central office to that brick and mortar, but now it's really extended, and the use cases have extended tremendously. So, and that's kind of where I see it.
Awesome. We've sort of touched on my my next question, so I'm going to reword it. I was going to ask, why it's necessary, and I think we covered that pretty well. I'm curious about some use cases that you guys might have seen. Do any of the three of you have anything interesting? Any cool deployments, or even some of these examples have been great, right? Like I think with COVID and schools needing more outdoor classrooms, or when they get the pull-up trailers, right? Like that's something I wouldn't have traditionally thought of as last mile connectivity, but after this conversation so far, I mean, how long does it take for ISP to get a new line out there versus just a quick cellular deployment, right? So yeah, what are your thoughts?
I think we've touched on a couple. We've touched on one-to-one learning or distance learning. Kids out there in their school district, they don't have equitable access to high-speed internet. Parents can't afford wireline internet, so school districts, IT staff, it's much easier for them to manage a fleet of cellular devices via a cloud solution than it is to contract negotiate with ISPs and be kind of a pseudo ISP agent for families out there. We've talked about kind of that disaster recovery scenario. We're going to talk about the last mile and the last mile. I know I've talked to the Army Corps of Engineers before, and the Army Corps of Engineers comes in on waterways a lot when there's flooding, and they redesign levees and dams. And so we'll talk about them, right? I've talked about how they deploy solutions that have independent constant power sources, like PopUp Network Kits with integrated Cradlepoint technology, or otherwise, where they're out there on the waterways, where again, cellular is still propagating out there. But let's take a flood scenario. The officer can only drive their car so far until you can't send that car out into the flood, right? They don't have amphibious vehicles. So then they hop in their boat, and they still take a kit in the boat, and they're still rocking and rolling, maybe with their MDT in tow or their tablet in tow, to be able to do reporting out there from the field. So there's all kinds of different things out there, but those are just the few that come to mind. And I'm sure that Nancy and Tom and their breadth of experience in the industry and with Cradlepoint probably have encountered some real unique ones where customers needed a last mile pop-up solution, if you will.
Yeah.
One that had come up for me that sometimes people don't think about is your services to either your citizens or your public employees are still need to happen, right, during a disaster. And that's one case that I had seen that people had used an actual, a pop-up network kit, is they still needed to get payroll and services out, right? And so that's that, your primary agency there, right, was able to still make sure people had the money they needed, right? So if you're having to evacuate or you're still having to get some additional supplies to secure your home, or as the case may be, right, to get some food and I guess toilet paper, right, and stuff before it really hits, right? That's part of also that disaster recovery, is making sure that that your public employees as well as your citizen services are still there, and that the people who manage those have that secure access, right, to their network, especially as we're talking about now with cybersecurity, right? And that's been a big issue for me as well this last year. So really paying attention to that.
Yeah. Tom, anything to add there?
Yeah, well, I mean, you hit it on the day one connectivity, right? The waiting on that wire line to get delivered, pop-up networks, mobile command centers in disaster or, active shooter, whatever, situational awareness with drones, being able to survey the area and feed information back, not only to that mobile command center, but back to the HQ. And Nancy, you said something right as you were closing up that thought. What was your closing thought there?
Well, so the cybersecurity, we literally had a police department use the Cradlepoint routers as a way to circumvent some ransomware, and that the police department network had been shut down. So they were able to use the Cradlepoint and go point by point to reset it up.
Right, and I think we that's good. That's that you reminded me. So we've talked a lot about the remote endpoint or the remote side being able to communicate back, whether to cloud-based applications or feeding video back to a headquarters. But it's also the ability for that headquarters to maybe get connectivity back to that remote endpoint, whether it be the vehicle, whether it be a remote site, a brick and mortar, or a school or whatever, and being able to do remote management and troubleshooting during a disaster or a perceived disaster. It's being able to for maybe the place that's not having a disaster, be able to connect into the other place and communicate with them, right? And to initiate those things securely, of course, and being able to maybe assess the situation remotely. So I think that's a really big thing you need to take into consideration as far as preparedness and being able to handle the situation is just being able to reach out and connect, not necessarily connect back in as well. So
yeah,
a lot of use cases.
And if I may too, one of the things that Tom, in brain chaining off of what he had talked about too, is with that management plane and especially with the router, right? Very often the Cradlepoint router, I like to say, can be the one brain or router that rules it all, because you can have so many different applications and other pieces of hardware connected up to it, whether that's going to be hardened laptops, cell phones, printers, whatever it might be. It allows, with our management plane, that cloud manager, it allows whoever is providing that management services to really get a good oversight of their entire network, what's up, but also which cellular carriers are giving them that strongest as well. Return on that investment. So that's the other thing too that I think is going to be key is within that, what does it mean last mile? And then really being able to use, it's not just a piece of hardware. That software, NetCloud Manager, is really where the power is going to come in, right, for the RCN customers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we've talked about the PopUp Kit a couple times. I'm going to throw it up on the screen here. Reed, what else can you tell us about this kit? I know we've like I said, we've just kind of touched on it briefly. What would you say to the people watching? Like, why would they want this kit?
Yeah, so I think that there are a lot of different customers out there that fall squarely into some of the use cases we've talked about today. But I think bottom line, why they would want our kit is that it does offer them that last mile connectivity. It offers them a rapidly deployable network in a pinch. So whether they're in a disaster scenario and they need a network back online that they can get into their mission critical software databases or software reporting systems, or whether they need just something as mundane, as simple as they really like to broadcast their athletic events out at the press box at the football stadium. And there's definitely not a wire line that runs all the way up to that press box to support something. So, I've had all kinds of people come and ask, we want this because we have a need for a pop-up connection. So one actually unique use case for this is a lot of law enforcement agencies with drone programs and drone surveillance programs are actually asking for pop-up network kits. You think about a unit or detachment that truly goes that last mile. These drones really can go the last mile, and with something like a pop-up network kit. And I know this one advertises the IBR 900 from Cradlepoint, but also our 1700 version and our 1900 version really start offering some serious currencies of the LTE advanced market and also the 5G market. So not only that, I'll end with this, right? There's a lot of different case solutions like the RCN PopUp Kit on the market today. But what I will say is that we've tried to be very intentional for a lot of public safety agencies, a lot of government agencies that need these types of solutions. Everything lives and dies by the budget, and budget can be so limited year by year, especially coming off a year like COVID, where many sales tax reliant states, businesses were shuttered for the better part of the year. And so local government, county government, state government, tax income was severely hindered, and we're just now feeling the effects of that in terms of their total IT spend capabilities. And it's partially why you see so much federal assistance coming over the top, right, to supplement what was lost. But I would say about ours is what we try to be very mindful of constructing this to still make it every bit as rugged and reliable as other kits on the market, to invest seriously in our battery technologies, to extend from that 10 hours, which is what we started at, up to 16 hours with our Mark III battery today, and then integrate the industry-leading cellular mobile access router solution, Cradlepoint, with their NetCloud manager software, where if you have multiple of these units out in the field, you can push out policy updates, but also integrate their advanced licensing on that NetCloud platform for schools to achieve SIPA compliant filtering, or for a federal agency to be able to add some advanced security measures like deep packet inspection, intrusion prevention, to guard against some of that ransomware that Nancy was talking about earlier that a police department experienced. So it's really, we've tried to make something that's affordable, that comes in at about 50% less than a lot of the other leading boxes on the market. We absolutely tried our best not to skimp with the componentry either. So we've dropped it off 30-foot buildings before 3 times, and it survived. So it's going to survive those human level crashes when you drop it. So anyway, truly a last mile connectivity solution for many of our customers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, like you said, they've thrown it off the roof here a couple of times, so you just got to be careful, walking outside. But we're always making sure it's as rugged and reliable as we can make it. Absolutely. How you can learn more about 5G solutions. So the first one, really before any of these, I want to say drop anything in the Q&A. We're going to have that Q&A section here in a few minutes, and so we'll answer any questions you guys have then. But outside of that, the first place you'd want to take a look is the webinars. You're already here, but we cover a ton of topics in these. 5G is hands down our most common topic. So there's always a lot that can be learned. Additionally, if you would have anything else that you'd love to learn about, just let us know, and we can definitely make that happen. Also, we have a ton of webinars that we've done in the past. We put them on our YouTube channel. So just go on YouTube and search RCN Technologies. But outside of webinars, number 2, I would say, is our news and articles. So we curate news, articles, press releases, etc., on a variety of topics. You can find all of this and more on our website. It's just rcntechnologies.com. And then lastly, I'm going to say keep up with us on social media. This is where we share a ton of information about webinars, our articles, anything that's just going on. It's a great way to engage with us. If you have any questions after the webinar, feel free to shoot us a message on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever works for you, and we will get back to you and answer that. So with that being said, Reed, can you let them know how RCN can help?
Yeah, sure. So a couple things here about how RCN can help in terms of helping agencies out there get prepared for 5G, prepared for disaster recovery, prepared for last mile connectivity solutions. First and foremost, right, come to us because we are a national elite Cradlepoint partner. That simply means that we have partnered with Cradlepoint for a very long time. We've taken that partnership very seriously and worked not only through our sales staff to be certified and knowledgeable about their product and how to implement that, how it will solve customer pain points and meet some needs, but also been very serious about our technical staff being trained up to the level of a Cradlepoint engineer that's supporting Cradlepoint customers out there every day. So I would say first and foremost, right, if you like some of the solutions you've heard today and you want to know more about those and you want to see if it would work within your budgetary constraints, definitely you can reach out to us from a solution design and procurement standpoint, but also in terms of some of Cradlepoint's 5G endpoints, they actually have a partner pool that you have to be a 5G specialized partner, meaning that you have met a series, it was very extensive list of check marks before you can get authorized to not only sell some of their wideband endpoints that are going to be some of their fastest bandwidth routers, the W2005, the W4005, but also to be able to install those as well. So if customers are looking for something that's going to offer them just as much connectivity as their traditional wireline today and those 5G adapter endpoints, or they're looking to see if that's a viable replacement solution for that ISP even, then they can come to RCN and know that not only can they procure those endpoints through us, but we have a whole field installation team to deliver and install those as well. And then lastly, what I'll say is that our engineering team, like I said, are very serious about knowing as much about the Cradlepoint solution as possible. And we do offer tier 1 through 3 technical support to our customers that deploy through RCN for the lifetime of that deployment. So it's not a box and a bill, as we say, but really we're here as a partner to our customers for the long haul, supporting those units, tackling any troubleshooting questions, educating about the power of Cradlepoint, about the power of NetCloud, so on and so forth. So if in anything RCN can help, it's just leveraging our expertise as a 5G enablement and specialization company to help deliver some of those currencies in purview of our topic today, to be prepared for disasters, recover from those disasters, or enable that last mile connectivity for whatever operation you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said it any better. So if you're interested in working with us, here's Reed's contact information here. You can also schedule your free one-on-one expert consultation with him. You can get a personalized demo, proof of concept. He'll discuss the goals and needs with you and what your company's looking for, your department. Yeah, it's a great way to really just start that conversation, and then Reed will get you the best option available. But if we're moving through these too fast, by the way, we also have this website here, rcntechnologies.com/5G and coffee. You can download all those notes from today, and you can also schedule your expert consultation that way as well. But while you guys have looked at this, we're going to go ahead and get into our Q&A here. So let's see. I'll go ahead and stop sharing this real quick. All right. So first question that we've gotten in, how future-proof is the PopUp Network Kit?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at this as a RCN solution. But so we've got 3 different models of our PopUp Network Kit that we promote out there today and provide to customers. Again, it's in line with Cradlepoint's mobile series routers today. It's the IBR 900 kit, which is a 4G LTE advanced category 18 modem embedded in that router. So a lot of great 4G LTE, late generation currencies there in terms of carrier aggregation, speeds, throughput, Wi-Fi network. But we also offer the 1700, which offers an incredible amount of processing power, Wi-Fi client capacity capabilities, networking ports, and also incorporates a dual modem slot, which is what we'll key in on for the future proofing aspect. It's 5G optimized as well, meaning that you can slot a module modem in the future to bring it into the 5G era. And then lastly, the R1900, which is an embedded Cat 20 LTE / 5G product that can concurrently use both the best of the best 5G that's available and that best of the best LTE 4G that's available. So what I'd say across the board is leaving the 900 aside as your LTE advanced option only. The 1700, because it has that secondary modem slot, you can take a module into that slot, kit it in there, and then provide the necessary antenna elements. And that MC400 is what Cradlepoint calls their module. Their 5G model, actually, and I know Nancy and Tom will nod in agreement here, slated to come out Q1 of 2022 right now. But customers that have 1700s today can actually buy that module and start using 5G on their endpoints when it comes out. And then the 1900, of course, has 5G, but they have an accessory dock on that. I believe it's called the RX30, and it's going to add a couple more networking ports, but also a secondary modem slot to the R1900. So as the 5G module modems continue to increase in currency, or a customer wants to add a second 5G module modem for the purpose of redundant carriers, meaning Verizon might be your primary, but if you ever roll out of Verizon, you want AT&T to take over, they can choose that option with the 1900 as well. So really for the customers that are very future-proof and conscientious on their PopUp Network Kit, they definitely want to buy the ones that come pre-configured with a dual modem or dual antenna configuration. So when they do get to the point where they want to add a second antenna or a modem, rather, for the 1700 to upgrade to 5G or the 1900 to add a redundant carrier, that they can do that because they already have the antenna elements in place to support that expansion. So hopefully I covered everything there, and I'll ask Tom and Nancy, back me up. It's still Q1 of 22 on that MC400 5G, right? Or is that accelerated or delayed any?
That is still the current time frame, yes.
All right, fantastic.
Yeah,
And I can tell 5G specialization program there. You you hit it all on the nose there. Good job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just, you know, he's going to stay here at RCN. So awesome. Okay. So second question here. I know we're coming up on time here. What do you recommend for those without 5G in their area? So I mean, I would say what PopUp Kit with the IBR 900. Is that what you would recommend for those without 5G in their area? Or
definitely an LTE endpoint, but I'd be more interested to hear what Nancy or Tom has to say.
Oh, that's a good point. Yep.
I'm always a big fan of the get prepared for the future. So the 1700 allows for that 5G expansion, and then the R1900, while it is already 5G, it obviously goes back and can support any 4G LTE as well, right? But then as that network builds around you, you've already deployed, right? Technology that can handle it. Is my thought.
Yeah. Yeah, that's. I would imagine that's one of those things where we just have to learn about your organization and see what the needs and challenges are, and then we can provide the best solution based off of that. Let's see, third one, and we actually talked about this right at the beginning. But what happens if a cellular tower goes down? So I guess talking disaster recovery again. Yeah, what are you guys' thoughts on that for communication, for last mile connectivity, all of that? So if a cellular tower goes down.
Yeah, Mark, I think you actually have an interesting, unique experience over some of us, right? So you lived in Gatlinburg a couple of years ago when there was a big wildfire. So I don't know if you had vacated the area, or I'm sure you're keeping close watch on the coverage, but did you see what the carriers were able to do in terms of resources?
Yeah, it was actually kind of wild. I want to say, so I have Verizon for my cell phone, and they were out there like the next day already starting to repair it. I can't remember. It might have taken like a day or two to get the towers back up. But I want to say that cell coverage was back up before my electricity was, so it was very fast.
Yeah, and so I think that's important that, and we let off way when we started this webinar, but I think that's important that over any ISP carrier, an ISP is not going to go out and roll out some magic truck, some wire truck, and the wire truck's going to plug into all of your cell phones or computers to give you connectivity.
Yeah.
It's just not how it works. But every single cellular carrier has a disaster recovery, disaster response team that will roll in these cellular on wheels assets, these cows or colts or whatever that, insert zoo animal or barnyard animal here, acronym that they call them. That's really just a very highly mobile deployable tower that can offer small cell cellular coverage in the event of primary towers down. And that way your emergency operations center with your mission critical groups like search and rescue, fire, police, so on and so forth can do their thing. But also if they have evacuation shelters, that those citizens that have evacuated there can use their cell phone endpoints to communicate with their loved ones, so on and so forth. So I think that really, again, if we're wrapping and tying it back into planning ahead, is that you need to consider cellular as a viable solution in a disaster, because not only, even if all the towers go down, Mark, you said it, you lived through one. Verizon had the towers back on in 2 days, but in the meantime, they had all their assets there blasting cellular.
Absolutely.
So you're not going to get that with wireline.
Yeah, and from a government perspective too, I mean, that's something, the evacuation center was, it was right behind my house actually. And it was like sort of like a community center, but like a for-profit type thing. But yeah, so for communities that are looking for to be proactive about this, having something like a PopUp Kit or a router solution. I'm not sure what the best solution for a government option would be, but something like that would have enabled being able to contact your loved ones, because I know there was people looking for hours and hours, trying to figure out if their loved ones were safe, because you couldn't get a hold of anybody, because all the towers and stuff were down. So yeah, I know there's things out there for like that as well. Let's try and jump through this here. We've got one more poll. Let's see if it's sharing.
And for fun, something to share is that utilities.
Right. Basically, I'll go ahead and push this last poll up. What's that, Nancy?
Well, I was going to say something I think that is fun to share that sometimes people don't consider is that in first responders, utilities such as telecommunications, right, are quote unquote second tier, right? Almost everybody thinks of as right, police, fire, EMS, right, and then some of our FEMA, our federal and whatnot. But utilities, schools, and healthcare are also a part of that first response system and are eligible for, right, whether it's FirstNet, the Verizon and T-Mobile priority programs as well.
Absolutely.
So those are they are considered key components of disaster recovery, and schools are a part of that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. We'll pop this URL up there for you guys again. I want to plug real quick our next webinar. It's going to be September 14th at 2 p.m. The topic is how 5G is redefining election security, which I thought was actually kind of a topic for today. I'm glad we didn't get into it too much, but make sure you go to our LinkedIn page to register for this event. So Nancy, Reed, Tom, do you guys have any parting words for our audience today?
No, I think we've covered it.
Cool.
Thank you for the invitation.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you all, and thank you to those of you that watched. Really appreciate everybody's time today. So we'll definitely see you next time. Everybody have a good one.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. See you, Reed.